Finally, my last item, it's widespread knowledge now that we had an incident on the Red Line on Tuesday where a LAPD officer removed a young woman from the train after she refused to take her feet off the seat. This was an action that was against our code of conduct. I can say a lot about this incident, but I won't because I want to respect the investigation that's underway. It's a very unfortunate situation. I publicly said that I was disappointed that it escalated to that level because these situations are very upsetting and threatening to everyone on the train. But we understand and respect our police officers in their day-to-day duty, in their work to keep our system safe and secure. They have tough jobs, we realize that. I've had very productive meetings with LAPD, our transit chief, Chief Green, and there's a lot of lessons learned that came out of this incident for both Metro and LAPD as well. So going forward, we see a very good path going forward as we look to better our processes and our security procedures on all of our trains. So I wanted to let the board know where we are on that, and we will keep the board informed, as we always do, once a month with the various security stats that we bring to the board, that our security chief, Mr. Wiggins, brings to the board on a monthly basis. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Director Butts.
Actually, you know, having run 3 police departments, I'm pleased that now I don't have to wait until investigations are done to give my opinion. Bob Green, I'm so thrilled that he is in charge of the transit policing for the LAPD. I had the opportunity to work with him when he was a captain. He commanded the LAPD substation at LAX when I was deputy executive director in charge of law enforcement and public safety there. Great person, couldn't be a better person to ensure the deployments, the commitment, and attention that the system deserves. That being said, I would tell you that I was very disappointed that anyone would weigh in on judgment of that officer's actions, that sergeant's actions, because I thought he was in an extremely difficult situation. He would have no expectation that asking someone to take their feet off the furniture would result in resistance. At that point, he had 2 choices. Ignore it and walk away and let everyone on that train say, oh, this code of conduct means nothing, so I'm going to smoke when I get ready to. I'm going to lay across the seat when I get ready to, because when it comes to the point that I just say, I don't want to do what you say, officer, then that's it. And that is not why you had me put all this pressure on these departments to have people accountable, to have them to be on the trains, to enforce the code of conduct, which was not happening before. And then this sergeant, he has to make a decision. He has to say, well, I walk away, or I call ahead, and then we'll get 3 or 4 officers to meet me, and then we'll take her off the train. Why would he expect that he would have to do something that draconian to write a citation for the code of conduct? And so he should have expected that as soon as he put his hand on her shoulder and let's get off this train, she should have got up and got off the train. Instead, she escalated the situation. Now, once you put your hands on somebody, you have to have a resolution. He could not deal with her in the middle of that train. There are too many people around him. He's one officer. He has a firearm. He can't risk that somebody else is going to get froggy and now attack him, and now he's in the middle of a bunch of people trying to keep his firearm. He gets her off the train. That should have ended it. Then Some other person takes it upon themselves to get behind him on his gun side, close to him, and harangue him. Another person gets to his right while he's got the person he's trying to detain on his left, and she's haranguing him. Now, at that point, he should have told them, you're interfering and obstructing an officer in the performance of his duties. You back off. And it would have been okay if he used curse language to let them know he was serious. He cannot afford to lose in a confrontation. He has a firearm. But still cognizant that he's being filmed, cognizant of the politics of the situation, he lets this go on and he calmly asks for backup. And he's maintaining these three people, and he's being very calm about it. He attempts to handcuff the violator. She resists. Someone brings her backpack off the bus, and he made an instant judgment to allow her to retrieve that backpack. He should never have done that. He should never have let her retrieve an uninspected backpack when he's in the middle of an enforcement action. But you know why he did that? He acceded to the politics of the situation because he knew just what happened afterward. He would be criticized without any empathy for the situation he was in. I would tell you, as I watched that video, I kept waiting to say, okay, so what's the thing that he's going to do that's wrong? I said, oh, I get it. He's going to smack this lady who's in his face, haranguing him while he's trying to detain this brat. But he doesn't. I thought he was going to turn around and smack this guy who's on his gun side within 18 to 24 inches of him and protect himself. He did not. He asked for backup a second time. I'm in anxiety watching this, wondering how this is going to come out. Then finally the other officers arrive, and they detain the people. So that's my opinion. I don't need to see an investigation. This sergeant did an excellent job in what was an impossible situation that no one could have expected, that telling someone to take their feet off the furniture would gravitate to this. And I would tell you this, if he's investigated by the LAPD, I would want to be called as a witness to tell him what my expectations are of these officers and how they're supposed to enforce this code of conduct. You will never have the system that you want if these officers are placed in impossible situations. If you don't want it enforced, get them off the buses. Get them off the trains. Because that sergeant did the best he could when you had three people that just didn't do the common sense thing and say, officer, you're right. Those adults should have told that girl, get your feet off the seat. He's right.
Thank you. Director Solis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry that incident happened, and I understand that we, as a body here, voted on the Code of Conduct. And as simple as it might sound, putting your feet across, not allowing someone to be seated because you're taking up unnecessary space, we know what that means. We want to provide courtesy and space for people to have a safe, enjoyable, safe ride wherever they're going to work or home. But I really wanted to just mention that while we have looked at our security and how we're going about de-escalating things on our transit, whether it's buses or rail, it came to me that why, in other instances we have, for example, the sheriff, they have community folks that also go on with them sometimes, and people recognize them because they're from the area, and sometimes they even look like the community. I'm just thinking maybe as something that the CEO and this board could look at is using other techniques. We use it now for homeless. We use LASA. We use formerly homeless people helping us in our venture. Why couldn't we think about having some goodwill folks that can help be those voices for rationality and sensibility? So I just wanted to throw that out, not to look at LAPD and all that, but just to think, how can we improve the situation as we move forward? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ms. DuPont Walker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I speak this morning not as a sworn officer, but I am the close kin of sworn officers, both one of my sons and my husband. I, along with about 9.1 million other people, looked at that video. My first thought was, why was he alone? It's a colloquial saying, good cop, bad cop. And maybe if he had had a partner there, which I believe is our policy, there would have been someone to try to de-escalate the situation. I wish that we had known about it much earlier, but thank you, Mr. CEO, for the time that you spent updating us so that we could be more knowledgeable in speaking to the public. I next went to the policy that we have set in place. And the policy set in place, unless I misunderstand it, was first to address the passenger, and secondly, to issue a citation. In the portion that I was able to see, I did not see any effort to issue a citation. I think after several offenses, we would actually physically remove someone from the train. I'm also mindful of the report that we received in the Customer Satisfaction Committee that persons of color feel they're treated differently on the train by our sworn officers. In fact, we had to have a separate focus group so that we could hear from that population, because the kind of response on social media that we received did not reflect the demographic and diversity of our area. I think this is a lesson learned for us, especially as we move forward to build this global transportation system. This is not the way we want 9.1 million people around the world to learn of LA Metro. But more than anything else, we want to keep our commitment to our ridership. So thank you for the way it was handled. I hope that we will go back to the protocol we have for handling situations. It did not appear to be life and death. Yes, she should have moved. I wish she had not used the expletive, but it's very important for us to understand how to respond in relationship to the offense itself. I appreciate being kept informed as we move forward on this particular issue, but more than anything else, how we help LAPD coming in as a new enforcement entity be sensitive to the lessons we've already learned, the problems we've already experienced, so that we can improve upon what we're doing.
Mr. Bonin.
Thank you. And thanks to Ms. DuPont Walker for her comments and the reference to the conversations we've been having at the Passenger Experience Committee. Yesterday was, well, everybody views this video through a different prism of their own experiences, their own relationships, their own expectations. Yesterday was an interesting example of how different people experience our system and security on it very differently. We had large public reaction negatively towards this video. At the same time, yesterday morning at the Public Safety Committee meeting of the City Council, one of my colleagues testified that she's afraid to use the RedLine with her daughter. And there's a lot of people who have a lot of fear on our system. And we've heard that, and we've been making efforts to address it. But we also have to understand, as we try to navigate this issue, that there are lots of people who also feel that they don't feel safe on our system because of their perception or their experiences of law enforcement. Whether it's good or bad, whether it's based in reality or perception, that is a feeling of a large number of people who use our system. A member of the Customer Experience Committee at our hearing last week is probably one of the strongest advocates for transit in Los Angeles. And he said, given a choice between using a ride share or using our system, he would prefer to use a ride share because he feels that he's racially profiled on the trains and our buses. As we figure out how to properly provide safety and security for all of our passengers, we just need to be aware that there are those two very starkly different perceptions. And it's going to take a lot of hard work by Metro and a lot of hard work by LAPD and Sheriff and Long Beach PD to successfully navigate that. But as we look at this video, I think it's important not to go into either corner and say this is the reality, because frankly our system is dealing with both situations.
Thank you for a topic that came up in the CEO's report where he indicated that because it's under investigation, we're not going to talk about it. We certainly did a lot of talking about it. none of which I want to assure council has any official import because people were simply venting their own opinions. I have one as well. I would simply align myself with the statement made by the CEO in the LA Times this morning. I was also very disappointed. And in other contexts where we look at response to homeless people, to people with mental illness, to very young people, I think we always try to emphasize the least restrictive alternative, de-escalation, taking the least aggressive, stance first off. That would be my preference, and we could have this conversation. The nice thing about being on a board is that a lot of philosophical things come up, and we get to kind of air them. However, we have a real person who would like to make a comment on the CEO's remarks. So if I have no other requests to speak on the board, I'd like to call Erica Patterson